I'm Nolan. This is Jake. Today we're out in a cover crop field, and we want to talk a little bit about our philosophy of the way we farm and the way a farm operates. So a farm is an ecosystem onto itself. Everything works in a circle. Everything that happens today affects what happens tomorrow and the next day. And what you did yesterday affects what happens today. And with that in mind, we try to make all our decisions. We're in a field here of cover crops. If you want to look at it, it includes some oats, some hairy vetch. What else do we have here, Jake? There's some peas down here. Here are some real tiny sunflowers. We have, what else? Some radishes in there. We have some clovers. It's a very diverse mixture of plants that are growing here. And people say, well, what are you going to do with this? Well, actually, if this field was inside of a fence, this would be ideal feed for the cows. We were hoping that by this time of the year, which is the last day of September, that it will be about this high and thick. But the entire month of September, we got no rain, and even the end of August, the rain was very skimpy. So these crops did not grow very tall, but they've still done what they need to do, and that is encourage the soil biology to grow and develop. We're more concerned about capturing the sunlight and moving that energy underneath the ground and building our soil up. So depending on what we're trying to do, next year we may take this field and plant it into corn. And when you look at all the hairy vetch that's growing here and the clover that's growing here, you'll see that we'll have grown most of the nitrogen that the corn crop likes. So today, even though the soil looks like it's not producing any crop that could make us any money, it is contributing to our system. And our goal eventually is to get the farm to a place where it's a closed system for nutrients. And that will involve building more fences and having more intensive interaction with the animals that we can put enough nutrients down to grow, say, a crop of corn or a crop of potatoes. So here we see something very interesting in a field. We have a small sunflower. It doesn't look like it's going to end up producing many sunflower seeds, but look at what's crawling on that. It's a ladybug. A lot of people don't understand why I get so excited about seeing ladybugs, but this is an indication of an ecosystem that's working. And a ladybug is very predatory. She eats a lot of aphids and a lot of damaging pests. So we love having ladybugs in our fields. And the only way that you can keep the ladybug populations up is to have lots of different species of plants and have things continually flowering so that there's insects drawn in and it gives the ladybugs something to feed on. When it comes to pest control, we are looking for a balanced system here, and we want the insects to be in balance with each other. It's okay, we will put up with a few damaging pests as long as we have a population of predators that will be eating them. They'll keep them in balance, and that's really what a natural system is about. Nature always wants to return to a balance, and the less we can do to upset that and the more we can do to keep that even, the better of a job we can do as farmers. So here we are in a field of field corn. This corn is grown and it will be fed to It'll be fed to livestock, probably chickens, maybe hogs. But this is very similar to the cornfields that you see anywhere you're driving along, in that we end up with ears of corn, but in some ways it's very different. So the first thing that you'll do if you come in here, you'll notice the heavy amounts of cover that are on the ground, and you can see them if you look through there. There was a heavy crop of rye and vetch in this field when we planted it. In fact, it was that heavy that we ended up with stand issues, and there were that many slugs in that the slugs ate the first planting of it. And we actually ended up replanting this field of corn. So that's the first thing. But as I mentioned about our farm being a system, we grew a heavy cover crop the year before, and we left the crop grow into the spring, and at least half of our nitrogen was actually grown from the nitrogen fixing cover crops before that, which was primarily vetch and some peas. So we have a field here that is going to yield at the same level as a crop that was grown with a lot of nitrogen, synthetic nitrogen, but we've used very little on this field. So that's one way how it's different. The other way how it's different from most of the corn crops is this is called non-GMO corn. So this corn does not have any of the gene editing done to it that makes it resistant to, say, corn borer or glyphosate. So we use no glyphosate on these fields, and we don't have any protection, any genetic protection from rootworms or corn borers or that sort of thing. But the neat thing about this corn is, while it looks like the other corn, we are usually able to find places that want to buy this corn for about a 10% premium in price, which is very good. And it's also, the seed is also cheaper than the genetically modified seed. So it's a win-win situation, and we enjoy growing corn this way. In the interest of showing the good with the bad, I want to show you this ear of corn. So we've gone through an exceptional dry period here, probably 4 weeks of no rain, and while our fields with the covers on them did a lot better job of holding the moisture, and the plants came through the drought, there was definitely issues with them. And here we can see on a cob of corn. Corn pollinates from the bottom to the top, and when it pollinates, as much moisture and nutrients it has, that's how far it pollinates. So as you can see, we have about half the cob, which has nice ears that are just filling out and just finishing. But then you'll notice that there's some kernels here that are not developed. And then when you get up further here, the kernels weren't even pollinated. So what happened was, when pollination was going on, there was enough of moisture and enough of nutrients to pollinate the cob to about here, but then it got dry, and the corn plant said, "Hey, I just can't support all those kernels," so it dropped off those kernels down to here. So here you can see the effect that drought can have on yield after the corn has pollinated. So here we are in a potato field. We have on this side a potato field that is not harvested yet, and on this side we have a potato field that was harvested a couple weeks ago. The weather has been an issue this year for a lot of reasons. We're not as far along on our potato harvest as we would like to be. The weather was hot and dry 10 days ago, and we really didn't want to dig full days, and actually the skins weren't set like they should have been on the potatoes. But now we've had 10 days of rainy weather, and it's been too wet to dig. So we burned up about 3 or 4 weeks that we haven't gotten the production that we should have. So we'll have to deal with that, and we'll have to get caught up. But show you a field of potatoes. We have, this is the Juanetta variety. We use them for French fries. This particular field was grown not organically. We've used a few chemical fertilizers on them, a very low rate of ammonium sulfate and a low rate of synthetic nitrogen for this crop. But we also used composted animal manures and compost to provide the nutrients for these fields. Once again, as I talked before, where we're inside fences and we're growing potatoes and we've run the cattle, we're able to use a lot less nutrients. We did use a few synthetic chemicals for weed control as well. But as you can see, there's still some weeds in the field, and I guarantee you that if you find a field anywhere that has perfect weed control, there's a good chance that there was way more chemicals used than really what should have been. So we're going to scratch around in the soil here, and we're going to see what we can find, see what the potatoes look like. So these potatoes were planted in the end of April. They had the whole year to grow. As you can see, these are what's left of the vines. The vines have died, and we'll dig in here and we'll see if we can find some potatoes. So what I'm always looking for, there you can see there's a beetle in there, so there's a lot of life in the soil right now. And here are the potatoes we grew. It looks like this hill set a lot of tubers, but they did not get overly big, and that's just what you deal with in the potato world. If it sets a lot of tubers, they're smaller. If it doesn't set many tubers, they're big, and that can be good and bad in both ways, because if you have 3 potatoes that are that big, not everybody wants big potatoes. But when you have a hill of small potatoes, that's not the answer either. So there's a lot of variables, and there's a lot of things we do to try to control size. But really, when it comes down to the end of the day, Mother Nature and the weather that we have is what really affects where our potato crop ends up. So these potatoes will be a decent crop. They should make some good tasting French fries. So here we are in a field where we had grown organic potatoes. And the one thing you'll notice if you'll look at this field, which was dug about 3 weeks ago, is that there's just a ton of different things coming up, especially buckwheat. There's a lot of buckwheat coming, and there's some sunflowers coming. And that is because we grow a lot of buckwheat and sunflowers for cover crops. And in this particular field, a lot of it volunteered in the field and grew alongside the potatoes. And when we harvested the potatoes, we seeded the buckwheat and the sunflowers. So we're going to let these grow for another week or two, and then we'll come in here, we'll do a tillage pass, and we will plant winter grain, probably either barley or wheat, and we'll grow that for a year. And then after that, we will plant another cover crop and either make hay or graze it during that 2-year period. And then we'll come back in with potatoes again. And the reason for that is we need to build our soil up as much as we can when we're when we're not growing potatoes, because potatoes are very disruptive to the soil. Especially in our organic production, we look at the fields and we think, oh, this looks pretty rough, or this looks kind of messy, or it doesn't look neat. But actually, it's a better way to run the system. And when you have a lot of different plants growing in the field at the same time, you have diversity, which allows everything to grow better. Here's something that Jake likes to see in the field, and I do too. You see these, you see how the soil is aggregated, and it almost looks like it was tilled up right here. Well, if you look more closely at it, you can see that this is where an earthworm came in and out of the soil. And that's just another sign that our fields are healthy. If you have good earthworm activity, that can do a lot of the tillage work of the soil for you. It cycles nutrients. It plants seeds. We love our earthworms. In fact, we've done some calculations already as to how many pounds of earthworms there are per acre, and it can get into several thousand pounds of earthworms that are working on each acre of field. And it's the biology in the soil that makes everything else work and makes the whole system work. So here we are in one of my favorite fields. It doesn't really look like much right now, but what we're doing is really a good thing for soil health. These plants that you see growing here are sorghum Sudan grass. And this was planted right after a wheat crop last year, which would have been beginning to the middle of July. So we planted that. The sorghum Sudan grass grew. As you can see, some of it actually got pretty tall. We left the cattle in, and the cattle grazed the sorghum Sudan grass. And then the field was kind of bare looking. So we went and put some peas and wheat and oats and radishes. We went and drilled some of those in. Now, as I said before, we've come through a dry period here of about 4 months, so the month or 4 weeks, and the September growth was definitely not what it should have been, but we do have more growing here. So what we're going to do in a couple weeks' time is we're going to bring the cattle back and run the cattle over this again and let the cattle graze it right down to the ground. This will keep growing as long as we have a little bit of favorable weather, and then we'll bring the cattle in, we'll graze it down to the ground, and then we'll come in and till it up for our potato crop next spring. And we will have most of our nutrients for our potato crop deposited here on this field from the cattle, and from the time that that we've spent on the grazing. So it's just one of my really favorite things about farming with nature instead of against it. This farm is an ecosystem, and all farms are an ecosystem. And what we're trying to do is work with nature as much as we can to make the farm a self-sustained ecosystem. We're standing in organic fields that we graze when we're not growing crops. We grow potatoes and small grains and forages on these fields. The cattle eat them and deposit manure back on the fields again and build the soil up and build the soil life up. And that's the number one goal of our farming operation, is to make our soil better. Because the better we make our soil, the healthier the food is and the more productive that the land can be. So Nathan, if you want to turn around and look over there, you can see the key to our success with our farming system, and that is having animals involved and having them on the land. Thank you, and if you have any questions or you want to discuss it further, do not hesitate to reach out to me and call me and talk to me. I'd love to talk to you.